We hope you enjoyed this Film at LACMA presentation of A Very British Scandal. My name is Janelle Riley. I'm an editor at Variety, and I'm so pleased to welcome today's guests, the stars of the series, Claire Foy and Paul Bettany. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me also. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Congratulations on a fascinating series. Whenever I have people as accomplished as you both, I actually love to go back to the beginning and sort of ask, you know, the moment that you got into this industry, was there a time when you knew you wanted to be an actor? Did you know the second that, you know, you were young, or was it something that like you discovered in, you know, school? Was there like that pivotal aha moment? And let's start with Paul.
Yeah. Was there a pivotal aha moment? Yeah, I wanted to be a guitar player, and I was just not good enough. And and then I thought, God, oh yeah, I was living in this dreadful apartment above a Turkish restaurant, I seem to remember, and my two flatmates did a midnight flit and left me with the rent, and then my landlord took my guitars, which was how I was making money on the streets. And then I rang up my parents and said, you have to come and fetch me. I failed at being a grown-up. And so they did. And then I thought, what am I going to do with my life? And I thought, oh, I guess I'll give acting a go. And that's how that happened.
Wow. Do you mind?
So the aha moment was in Turnpike Lane. And
it was never in Turnpike Lane.
Certainly was.
I used to live in Turnpike Lane, Paul Bettany.
Did you really?
Yeah, so I owned my first house.
Well, that's where I was.
Claire, what about for you?
Oh, it was not an aha moment. I still was very much in denial. I basically got told at university by a lecturer that I should go to drama school. And so I did, because he told me to. And then even at drama school, I remember sitting in the pub on like one of the first nights, and my friend, who's now one of my best friends, saying to me, so what are you going to do? You're going to move to London after this and like do acting? And I was like, oh no, I don't think so. Because I didn't really know what it was. I didn't know how people did it. I didn't understand that. I mean, I love that Paul decided to do acting to pay the rent, because basically I did everything but in order to pay the rent. Yeah, I just didn't know anyone who did it. I didn't know that you could earn money. I didn't even know how it worked. And so then when I was at drama school, and I sort of thought I knew how you did it then. But it was a scary prospect, and it wasn't something that I ever thought I would get. I don't know. I just didn't think. I'm still surprised by it, really. It's a funny old thing. Like, it's not, I don't know, it's very bizarre. But I didn't do Amdram, or like we call it in the UK. I didn't do any like dramatic work as a hobby. I wasn't like desperate. I just didn't, yeah. But I do love it.
Do you remember getting your first job?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do.
Amazing.
I was in a call centre.
That's so great.
stood by like you know, a machine that you get food out of. What do you call that?
Yeah.
Vending machine.
Yeah.
And all the other people who worked there were actors as well. And I had a whole like I was stood by it and I was going, I don't understand. What do I do now? Do I leave? Do I leave the call centre? What do I like? I felt like I should have some sort of like, you know, moment that people have in the film where they're like, I'm done. But I didn't. I just stayed, finished my shift.
Well, you're not still there anymore, so you had that moment at some point.
Yes, that's true. That did happen eventually.
Well, A Very British Scandal is based on the very real story of the Duke and Duchess of Argyll, and obviously their contentious divorce. I'm curious for each of you. I was not familiar with this story when I saw this series, but I'm suspecting you both were. How much did you know or think you knew about the Duke and Duchess when this project found its way to you? Let's start with Claire this time.
We didn't know. I love that you suspect that. We knew absolutely nothing.
Really? I figured this was a big part of British history.
No. I mean, I think it's like most things that sort of begin and then sort of die. I think because it was so awful, I think maybe their legacy would have been different if they had lived in the sort of their heyday a bit more. But because it ended so badly, it was sort of swept under the rug and ignored, I think. I think my mum remembers vaguely something about it, but no, it's not really something that I didn't know anything about it at all. I didn't know who she was, even though she was so incredibly famous at the time. And you didn't either, did you, Paul Bettany?
I did not actually, Claire. Yeah, because I guess, and this is going to be hard for you to believe, but I wasn't born in the 1950s, and so I wasn't around, and it sort of happened. And I think with those sort of scandals, they explode, and then they kind of just, disappear in a very generational. So yeah, I knew nothing about it.
I just thought because, we're so fascinated in America with the royal family, I assume that the fascination must be triple there. But I guess it's a much more of an obscure story than I realized.
Yeah, there's a sort of weird thing in England where we're not. You think we would be, but we're actually. I think it's that thing, isn't it? That the closer something is, the less you want to know about it, or that you're sort of ashamed of it in some way. And so I think from the outside, there's much more people that kind of appreciate aspects of British history, and we just want to pretend they never happened.
Yeah, and I have a suspicion that Americans are really into the royal family because they don't have to pay for it. You got out from under like 200 or so years ago, but every time one of those guys that get married, it's like a $36 million tax bill.
Right. I hadn't thought of that. So I'm curious.
I had it. So I moved to America, a republic.
So if you weren't familiar with this story, how did the project find its way to you, and what interested you? Was it Sarah Phelps's scripts, or was there a pitch? And what did you sort of think about your initial characters?
Me? Okay. Okay. So I received a script. First thing I knew was that Claire was attached to it, and I'm a huge fan of Claire, as you're probably noticing from this Zoom. So there was much adulation there, so I was already poised to love it. And then I read the scripts, and I thought the story was riveting. And I thought there were lots of opportunities for us as scene partners to have really create a really interesting dynamic between the pair of them. And I suspected, and it turned out that I was right, that Claire was a very playful actor on set, and she really is. And so I thought I'd have a really nice time. I don't know. I'm the worst at it. I hate talking about acting. I'm terrible at it.
Claire,
what about you?
Yes, scripts were sent and read, but I didn't really. I mean, I thought she was great. And I loved kind of the story, and I loved how she moved through the world. But it wasn't until I met Anne that I just think Anne Zawitsky, who directed it, she's just brilliant. She's just a brilliant person, and she's very funny and very Norwegian. And I just thought she was like the most interesting choice for directing a very, very English show. But it was really, for me, everything does really basically hinge on who you're acting with, because you don't want to, I don't know, you want to know that you want someone else to be great, basically, because then you go, oh, okay, it's going to be good then, because they're in it, not because I'm in it. And so as soon as I knew Paul was sort of thinking of possibly of agreeing, I was like, oh, okay, well then this is definitely something that I think could be really interesting, and we could show a different side of this story that maybe hasn't been, in this sort of genre of things, that could be really interesting to kind of investigate.
And I also think that Claire's 100% right about Anne, and also her being Norwegian and a sort of outsider from the British culture and the British class system, I think was really it was a great choice, and she also chose to shoot it in a way that feels kind of inappropriate. we don't really deal with the British aristocracy with handheld cameras, you know, and I thought that was a fantastic plan she had.
Forgive me for not knowing off the top of my head, but had the two of you worked together before? Did you know each other at all? Did you know you would get along?
No.
No.
No, it was a real risk.
Yeah, but I knew her oeuvre.
I knew his oeuvre as well.
Again, I think of England as such a small place in my mind that I just assume
he's
you
never
all know
here.
each other. Never there. He's always here.
Is this the first time that you've worked in England in a very long time, Paul Bettany?
Yeah, what? No. I went and did a sort of First World War thing, and then after working with you, I came to do a play, and
yes, you did,
in London, and for 3 months, and I love going back to England to work. Actually, I love it.
So complained about the weather. Just saying.
Well, it's miserable. It's miserable from October to March.
Yes, that is true.
It's not too bad. Maybe this is just something that good actors do, but the series does hinge so much on the chemistry between the two of you. I'm curious how you knew it would work, if it was sort of the moment you met, or if there's anything you can do to kind of help that chemistry along.
Well, I've had chemistry with a matchbox, so I'm never sure how much I believe in chemistry, because I've done scenes with marks, X's on matchboxes, where people are like, the chemistry was electric. But I think having real respect and faith in the person you're working with, and they are long hours, so enjoying their company and finding them funny is really useful. And I knew from the moment we started working on the script in meetings how whip smart Claire is about story, and that made me feel really safe. And then we just got on set and we started working on scenes, and it just really clicked. Claire, what do you think about working with me? Isn't it marvelous?
No.
It really was. I agree though, because we had like three days in like the Ramada Inn on a roundabout in London, and it was really amazing. Because I think it's interesting, isn't it? A lot of the time you can take a script on face value, and I think I already knew that what Anne was interested in was sort of subverting that, or kind of getting at the messiness and ugliness that surrounded them. These two incredibly sort of, you know, famous, like attractive, seemingly perfect people. And it's that thing when you start talking about, when people start providing their own like their own stories about themselves, or their own references, or what they think about it, that you just, Paul's just so interesting generally anyway as a person. But I just thought, he's going to elevate this to something really interesting. And that made me feel a bit braver and a bit more safe, really. And we did really, like, he became basically my comfort blanket, but in a way that was like, we would talk about things that we weren't sure about, and discuss it in a creative way, which I think a lot of the time I've had on set, like when you arrive on set you talk about the scene, but we really had, because of the way that we shot it, and you know, sometimes it would be ever so slightly chaotic, and I think that we would do like a lot of outside, like not on set chat about the work, which I don't know whether I do that often.
Right.
We both really cared.
And also I feel like often, well, not often, but sometimes you meet your scene partner and you're halfway through sort of shooting a scene, you realize, oh, they're trying to beat me. acting. You know what I mean? It's like it's some sort of sporting event where there's going to be a winner, rather than becoming more than the sum of your parts. And I can't tell you the number of times that's happened where you go, oh, you're trying to beat me at acting, which is sort of a hilarious thought. It just felt it felt genuinely, a much overused word, but it felt really collaborative, and that's so much more enjoyable than the other version.
Was it ever challenging because your characters are being so terrible to one another, you know, to then like break, and would you just laugh about it? Sounds like the atmosphere on set was actually really fun.
There were some tough days. I remember the toughest day was when Paul was about to do the scene where he has to sell socks. And I just was finding him particularly funny that day. So I'm pretty sure that there's quite a lot of me just sort of smirking or trying to stop laughing. And I'm supposed to be mourning the death of my father. It just makes me sound like a terrible actor. Not my father, my mother. But I do think that that's when sometimes projects live a little bit, when a little bit of the outside seeps in, and also, you know, people do smile and find each other funny. And I think sometimes in serious drama, people don't do that enough. So I'm hoping that that's not just being terribly unprofessional. But oh my God, I laughed continually every day from the beginning to the end, and then sometimes cried, but mainly laughed.
Paul, for you, what was the atmosphere on set like?
It was great. It was great. We had a great, I was going to say threesome, but that sounds really weird. But it was a great triangle between Claire, me, and Anne, and we all really were on the same page about what the show was and what was interesting about the show, and mostly and the fact that they are caught in a sort of sadomasochistic relationship, and there is also enjoyment in that, that they are enjoying each other in pugilism. They're enjoying each other's pugilism at times. And then there were the scenes that were horrible. For instance, strangling your mate Claire was not a great moment, and you get very, you know, anxious that you have hurt that person or all of that. But for the most part, we laughed.
I mean, you've both played real people before. I'm curious how that affects your preparation. Do you enjoy having outside material to draw on? Does it differ from creating a character from scratch?
I mean, I prefer as much information as humanly possible, because it makes me feel a bit safer. But then even if you're creating, even if it's the character that's in the script, then you'll just rely very heavily on that. I do anyway. I don't like to veer off course, get a bit scared by that, because I don't necessarily think that my instinct is going to be good. So yeah, I really enjoy it. And also I'm a bit of a sort of pervert in the way that I love information about other people's lives. Like I love, like for this, I got to listen to her talk for like 8 hours of listening to the real person discussing how they think and feel. And I mean, it's amazing to get that access to someone, and you do have to treat it really respectfully, and then, you know, hope you make the right choices. And but yeah, the research part of it is often my favorite bit to say.
Paul?
I think I approach work differently on different jobs, and you know, there wasn't a ton of information on him, but I mean, he was clearly a you know, a troubled narcissist, and pretty malignant, and did awful things, but he's also sort of a human being. And the thing that I felt that I had to be, that's the thing that I felt I had to be respectful of, that he wasn't just a moustache twirling baddie, and that there was, not that there were mitigating factors, but there was potentially some self-medicating that was going on from PTSD that was undiagnosed and all of that. But only in the only reason that's really interesting to me is so that he doesn't appear two-dimensional and lifeless.
I'm curious, you can do all this preparation for your character beforehand, but how much does it help when you get there and you step into these amazing costumes, you know, and you're shooting on these sets? And I just wonder, like, if the second you sort of put on those costumes and get into that hair and makeup, you stand straighter or you feel more royal. How much does it help with the final character?
For me, mine's very brief. For me, it's something I don't. It gives me something that I then don't have to worry about, which is the costume designer's done their job properly, and you look like a wealthy, posh aristocrat. And now I don't have to worry about that's taken care of, and I don't have to do whatever wealthy, posh aristocrat acting is.
Favorite type of acting.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with Paul. Like, it genuinely is something that, yeah, so many incredible people. And Ian, who was our costume designer on this, was amazing, and the makeup department were amazing. And they just made all that sort of stuff kind of, they provide that to the audience, so you don't have to do that yourself, like Paul said. But there were certain things in this that I just loved, and actually really did influence things. Like, I had like fake nails. Never had that before, and it really made, like, it does change what you do with your hands. Like, it genuinely does. I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't want them all the time, but I really loved how it made me change physically how I would move. And that's what they do as well. Costumes, is they do provide you, basically they manipulate your body in a way sometimes, which is really useful, I find.
And in addition to these amazing sets, I understand you got to shoot at the actual Inverara Castle. What was
Very
that
good
like?
pronunciation.
Thank you. I did it off the top of my head. No help whatsoever.
It was surreal, wasn't it, Paul? Like, it was really, like, I don't think I've ever done that, where I've actually filmed in the location where a lot of the stuff like went down. Like, it was really, really, it was so beautiful. But it was very bizarre.
Some of it was really eerie. Yeah, some of it was eerie and bizarre, and some of it was just really joyous. I think that Claire and I had a really, really great time filming. Well, I shouldn't speak for you. You probably speak for yourself.
I had a terrible time.
I had a great time on the boat, and you sort of, we spent a day on this beautiful Chris Craft, just gunning up and down this like glass still lock, and you just thought, God, I mean, I felt like the king of the world, you know, and it must have been extraordinary leaving your castle in a boat, and you know, and so yeah, we had wonderful days there, actually.
Yeah, and the sort of romanticism that comes with, you know, because she's not born into, you know, she's the daughter of basically an industrialist, a businessman. So she's not born into that. I mean, she is incredibly privileged and has probably spent a fair amount of time in big houses with castles and stuff. But I think how romantic it is. I mean, it's so romantic there anyway, because it's so beautiful. But also I don't know, like the house becomes an extension of him and of them, and a representation of their relationship, and it all goes terribly wrong, and so, you know, she's she falls in love with that place as much as with him. And I think she wouldn't necessarily fall so deeply in love with him if it wasn't for the castle. Yeah. You know, it makes him seem so, and, you know, the desire to find this sort of buried treasure at the bottom of a loch, and it's so otherworldly and kind of so romantic that I think it was really, but then you realize that, you know, obviously our account is a fictionalized account, but just the concept that they had been up there together on their own is really kind of amazing.
I know that the series is well, it's set primarily in 1963 and the 1950s, a very different time in the world, yet it's crazy how it feels more timely than ever. Why do you think the story is so important and relevant and resonates so much today?
I mean, lots of reasons. I think it's very easy to find parallels with the modern day in all drama, because people have lived through all those periods of time, and basically we don't learn from our mistakes, or we don't, you know, human behavior is human behavior, whatever period of time it's in, basically. And you hope that when you make something, that then people recognize themselves in it, regardless of the fact that there may be a slight barrier with the way that people talk, or the different mannerisms, or, you know, etiquette at the time and things like that. You just hope that people see them as real people. And I do think you have to be faithful to those things. But I think in this one, obviously, there is a real, you know, the way that women are treated in the press, in the judicial system, in the way people in the public eye are treated in both those systems as well, you know, like in the media and things like that. And I think it's easier sometimes to look back than it is to look at what's happening now. And I did find it ever so slightly depressing that there were days when I would be like, but has anything changed really? I'm not sure it has. I think things are probably slightly worse. I don't know. So any parallels that can be drawn, I think, are really useful, but also, you know, I think it's really important to remember it was a different time, and, you know, people had different attitudes and things. Whether people still have those attitudes today, you know, you'd have to ask them.
Right. I will say also, I think, I don't know whether it was the first time, but it certainly felt like it to me making the show. But I just think more and more, every part of people's lives, you know, just get commodified and monetized and they're thrown straight into the marketplace, no matter how private, no matter how sacred. They're just, and not only is it being done to people by the media, people are also doing it to themselves via whatever side of the Atlantic you're on, social media and stuff. People choosing to do that to themselves, and it's sort of extraordinary and damaging, I think, and reductive.
So for each of you, what ended up being the most challenging part of making this series? Claire, it sounds like the biggest challenge might have been not laughing during days.
That would be lovely if it was just that.
Yes.
I think I found one of the most difficult things for me, which probably no one will ever pick up on and isn't really relevant or interesting, but is that so much of it was based on people who had living relatives or based on fact, and we had the court transcripts that meant that because it was that we could make the drama. Basically, I hadn't really been in a thing where I had to navigate what you portrayed having a really massive impact on I suppose the story around the story, if you know what I mean. Like, I'd never done anything where I was like, you can show this bit but not this bit because that's based on fact and that's not, and we can't, we don't want to be done for libel, basically. And I've never really done anything like that before, and it was actually interesting. It was kind of like an acting exercise to have to navigate that whole thing, which is very dull, but is the case, I think, when you're making something that is based on fact and a real case and stuff like that. Like, you know, the legal aspect of their divorce is also the legal aspect of making the show, really weirdly. Yes. Say something interesting, Paul.
Oh, I got nothing really that interesting.
Oh, come on.
I suppose, did I find it, was it difficult, or was it, it was really, I felt really, I felt, it was felt dangerous and frightening, I suppose, is how it felt. Anne Sawitsky would often ask Claire and I to sort of march in totally the opposite direction from what you felt the scene was asking. And because I think Claire and I both trusted Anne so much, we just sort of chose to do it. And I think what happens, the narrative remains, and you just get a more nuanced, interesting, layered thing in front of you. But that's initially, I was like, I mean, for instance, you know, there's the final scene between them where they have dinner one last time, I guess. And she says, "See you in court" at the end of it. And it seemed very clear to me what the scene was asking of me, the actor playing Ian. And Anne just came and she said, "I want you to play it like that you don't want to leave her and you're in love with her all over again." And I went, "Wait, what?" And I was so confused by the note, and I thought, I'm just going to go for it. And it was, and it worked. It worked. Because of course the scene's already doing one thing, and why not bat against that? So I guess letting go and trusting was the thing that was difficult.
It's such a fantastic series. I want to say special thanks to Film at LACMA and Amazon Studios for this virtual screening and event. And remind everyone, if you want to watch A Very British Scandal again or share it with friends and family, it's streaming now on Amazon Prime Video. Thank you both so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.